Hey everybody, my name is Mike Hagan. Hey, this is the second video in a series testing this new Sony Xperia 1. I've got Ruthie Kraft with me today. She's a singer-songwriter and she's going to be our model in the studio. We're going to be testing out the camera functionality from the new Sony phone, and we're going to be comparing that with the iPhone X along with a full-on camera, the Nikon Z6. And I know that the Xperia 1's camera system won't compare to the Z6, but everyone wants to know, well, how does it compare to a real camera? Well, that's what the purpose of this video here is today. So we're in the studio, we got studio lights, and we're gonna shoot a bunch of portraits of Ruthie. We'll review them between the camera systems, and then after this, from the studio, we're gonna go outside, we're gonna shoot outdoors, and then finally, I'm gonna bring these into the computer and we'll do some Photoshop work on them and make a couple of prints to compare the three platforms. All right, well, we've got the lighting set up. I'm shooting with a LED over here in an octabox, and then I've got a simple reflector. So the studio setup is really simple. Now we're just going to test the camera's functionality. And on the Xperia 1, there are a lot of manual options, and I'm going to be shooting the manual camera. And if you recall, there are three cameras on this system. The first camera is a wide angle, the next is a normal, and then we've got the telephoto. I'm going to be shooting all the photos of Ruthie with the telephoto. That's a little bit more flattering. It's often awkward to shoot portraits with the wide angle lenses, so we won't even go there today. Everything will be with the telephoto lens. All right, let's get shooting. And I'm just going to go to adjust my settings here. I'm shooting at ISO 100. Exposure compensation, I'm going to add a little bit so it's nice and bright. And it's on IAF, I as in eyeball AF. That's pretty cool here. And it's tracking her eyes and making sure her eyes are in focus. Okay, here we go. We'll just start taking some pictures. One, nice smile. And it's tracking her eye actually very, very nicely. We'll shoot from a little higher angle, come a little closer. Oh, nice look. I love it. I like that. All right, well, that's the Xperia 1. Let's compare that now to the iPhone X and see how the iPhone X holds up. Here goes the iPhone X. Nice. Awesome. And again. And one of the things here I'm noticing on the iPhone is it started out, the exposure seemed a little bit bright, but it very rapidly came back to the appropriate exposure. I like the serious look. That's great. Now it's time to look at the Nikon Z6 and see how the mirrorless camera holds up. With the Nikon Z6, I'm shooting with a Nikon 85mm f1.8. I've got the FTZ adapter, so this is a F lens on the Z mount. I'm shooting ISO 100, about f2.5, and it looks like my shutter speeds are hovering right around an 80th of a second. So we're good to go. Beautiful. And let's bring the other shoulder in. Yeah, and I like that pose, Ruthie, actually, with your arm pushed up. Get a nice little tricep going on there. Oh, nice smiles. Nice look. All right, we've changed the studio up a little bit. We're gonna shoot a few more shots with the Sony and the Nikon and the iPhone. Here we go. Great. Awesome. All right, we're gonna do the same thing again with the iPhone. And then I'm gonna do one in nice and close. All right, so we shot with the iPhone. Let's now shoot with the Nikon Z6. Here we go. And let's do one chin down, kind of lean it into the camera. Well, that wraps up the studio session. Let's go outside. So we're outside, we've got a softbox out here. We're running that with an extension cord to my barn. And then we've got a big old reflector. Simple setup, simple lighting setup. We're gonna again test the Xperia, the iPhone, and the Nikon Z6. Here we go. Good, fantastic. One of the things I'm noticing here with the Sony Xperia is it's got quite a good depth of field. In other words, you know, the small sensor, the background is appearing fairly sharp, and I want to convert now to portrait mode and see what that looks like to try and blur out that background. Great. All right, let's shoot with the iPhone X now. Great. Looking good, looking good. So now we're gonna do the iPhone portrait mode and compare the two. Now we're gonna shoot with the Nikon Z6. This looks so nice. Great. Nice smiles. Fantastic. Perfect. Good job. All right, well that's a wrap for the outdoor photo shoot. Let's go inside and look at this stuff in Lightroom and Photoshop. We're back in the studio now, and I've made a bunch of prints. I printed one photo from each of the cameras that we tested in this video from the studio, and then I also printed one photo from our outdoor photo session just to compare the three and see which one looks best. So let's go through them. I'll have Josh, my camera guy, come on up here. We can look at them side by side. This left-hand group of photos, these are from the Xperia 1. The middle one, the middle photos are from the iPhone X, and then over here on the right, we've got the Nikon Z6. So without a doubt, the winner of the competition is the Nikon, and so would also be the Sony mirrorless and the Canon mirrorless, but that's really not the point of the competition. The point is to understand how well the Xperia 1 cell phone or mobile phone works for portraiture. And in this case, let's talk about some of these details. You'll see a color difference, and we sure noticed this shooting today. The Xperia had a little bit more of a neutral color. You can see the colors on this one. The left side of your screen, my right hand, are much more neutral, much more, what I would say, natural. Another thing we notice here with the iPhone over here, the colors are, they feel better. The colors are warmer, and I think just aesthetically, I kind of like the look of that. But that said, look at the roll off on the highlights. If we look at the iPhone here, man, we blew out all of the highlight detail on her cheek and her forehead, where the Sony, the JPEGs off of the Sony were very smooth. I retained much more detail off of the Sony. All right, same thing holds true for outdoors. You'll notice that the iPhone over here, the iPhone is much warmer, maybe a little bit more pleasing for people photography. The Xperia on this side, the Xperia is much more neutral. The colors aren't as saturated. Well, how about from an image quality standpoint? Both of them are pretty much equally sharp. I've found in general that the Sony processes the photo more than the iPhone does. In other words, I think that the Sony tries to do more, tries to make it look sharper. So sometimes it's to the detriment maybe of a portrait photo, whereas maybe for a landscape photo, that extra crunchiness, that extra grit looks great for nature photography. Now, one of the things in both of these cases, you'll see that the background is a little bit blurry, and that's because both of these images I used portrait mode. Honestly, the iPhone does a better job at that portrait mode than the Sony does, but the Sony did a pretty good job in that it still blurred out the background. I found the Sony portrait mode to be slightly overly aggressive, but to its benefit, there is a slider at the bottom of the screen that allows you to adjust how much blur you're introducing into the photograph. And I actually used that during this portrait session, and I put that slider about 50% or halfway across for this. So who wins this competition? Well, From a color standpoint, I like the iPhone. However, from an image quality standpoint, I like the Sony. And if I want to warm it up a little bit, I'll just bring it into Lightroom and add some additional color. Finally, another issue that I'm running into with the iPhone, look at those highlights. I've lost detail in the highlights on the top of her cheek, on her nose, and the very top of her forehead, whereas the Sony maintained all those highlights. So in this case, I'll take the Sony highlight retention over the iPhone color. If we look finally at the Nikon camera, well, you know, look at the background. We'll take the iPhone and the Nikon here. The Nikon's on this side and the iPhone is over here. You see that nice blurry soft background? That's because I shot the photo from the Nikon at f2.5, you know, so I got this really great separation, visual separation. And then I'll compare that Nikon with the Sony, do the same thing again, and you can see there's hardly even a comparison between the two from an image quality standpoint. But here's the thing, and my video guy and I, his name is Joshua. Joshua and I were talking about this, and if you put these all up on the wall and you look at all three photos from maybe 5 feet away, you can't tell the difference. They're all beautiful photos. They all are excellent. It's really when you start going in and pixel peeping and looking at super detailed, looking at it at the super detail level, that's when the separation starts to come out. And for the context of this comparison, I would say that the Sony is comparable to the iPhone, so much so that I would not hesitate to use the Sony for my general photography. All right, well, there you have it. There's my review of the Sony Xperia 1 for studio photography and for outdoor portrait photography. Hope you liked it. If you did like it, give me a thumbs up down below. Also, I would love it if you subscribe to my channel. You can do that by clicking down below the subscribe button. And finally, if you want to be notified when we have new videos, go ahead and click the bell button and you'll get a notification every single time we have a new video, which is about once a week. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and keep on shooting.